few movies have left such a mark on the sci-fi landscape as Alien and its sequels. And who knows what might have happened had these deleted scenes never hit the cutting room floor. As the first victim of the facehugger in Alien, Kane becomes an unintentional test subject as the crew try to learn about the apex predator they have unwittingly awoken aboard the Derelict. Or at least, that's what we're supposed to think. When it's later revealed that Ash is an android sleeper agent working for Weyland-Yutani, the entire affair starts to take on a different color. And perhaps nowhere is this better demonstrated than in the deleted scene, Kane's Condition. This scene sees an eerily passive Ash doing relatively little to help Kane as Joan Lambert tries to get an update on how he's doing.
There has to be a way to get it off his face.
Yes, well, I don't think we ought to try that again. It didn't work out too well last time.
More crewmates shortly join them, and Ellen Ripley demonstrates her keen eye.
What's that stain on his lungs?
Don't know, Ripley.
While the content of this deleted scene might seem fairly innocuous, its meaning is changed by later revelations. Not only do we learn that the stain is actually an embryo, but it's fairly apparent by Ash's blasé attitude that he does too. Perhaps no element of the Alien franchise has caused as much consternation among fans as the so-called Eggmorphing scene. And it seems that the more fans delve into the scene's implications, the more complicated xenomorphic biology seems to become. This sequence revolves around Ripley discovering that, having been captured by the xenomorph, Captain Dallas is now slowly morphing into an egg. Determined not to allow her new enemy to multiply, Ripley torches Dallas and the cocoons before taking her leave. When the egg-producing xenomorph Queen was introduced to the franchise in Aliens, it effectively changed the franchise's take on alien reproduction. Aliens director James Cameron responded to fan criticisms in a 1987 Starlog magazine essay, writing, "Alien screenwriter Dan O'Bannon's proposed life cycle, as completed in the deleted scene, would have been too restricting for me as a storyteller." Cameron went on to compare his version of the reproductive cycle to that of ants, adding, "The drones and warriors secrete a resinous building material to line the structure, creating niches in which they may lie dormant when food supplies and/or hosts for further reproduction become depleted." Ridley Scott changed his mind about Brett's death scene several times. In the cut that made it to cinemas, the scene leaves plenty to the imagination, but it was originally slated to be a lot more graphic. At first, the alien was going to remove Brett's heart. As Scott told Fantastic Films, when the others find him and turn him over, there's a huge cavity in his chest, reminiscent of the hole in the space jockey. But that was too much like Kane's death, so we eventually changed it. In the shooting script, Brett's death scene has the xenomorph leap down at Brett, snap his spine, and kill him as he screams. And that's not all. The script goes on to describe a horrified Ripley and Parker looking on as the alien disappears, carrying Brett's still writhing body. On the day, however, Scott changed his mind once again. Speaking to the VFX journal Cinefex, special effects supervisor Nick Alder revealed that the xenomorph was supposed to caress Brett's head in an inquisitive manner before cracking his head open. This version of the scene was shot, but ultimately not used in the final cut. It's impossible to overstate the impact of artist H.R. Giger's work on the Alien franchise, work that extends far beyond the titular xenomorph's form. A surrealist vision suffused with ancient Egyptian and Aztec influences, Giger's haunting renderings of the crash ship known as the Derelict are part of the magic that elevates Alien from a blockbuster sci-fi horror to a work of genuine art. That's exactly why it's worth checking out the deleted scenes of the Nostromo crew exploring the Derelict. While not too much of note happens in these scenes, they do a decent job of building tension before the discovery of the space jockey and the egg room, and give viewers a chance to spend more time in H.R. Giger's vision of cosmic hell. James Cameron's 1991 re-release Aliens Special Edition begins with an introduction in which the director tells viewers that what they're about to see is the ride that he intended you to take.
I think it's a longer, more intense, and more suspenseful version of the film.
However, it's not just the added suspense that makes these deleted scenes worth watching. It's also the extra character development and world building. One scene in particular lands significant insight into Ripley's relationship with Newt, the sole survivor of Hadley's hope. Finally, out of the medical facility after spending 57 years in hypersleep, Ripley waits to meet Weyland-Yutani Jr. executive, Carter Burke. When he arrives, he wants to talk about her upcoming hearing, but Ripley is only interested in news about her daughter, Amanda, who was still a child when she last saw her. And that's when she learns this.
Age 66. And that was at the time of her death, which was 2 years ago.
Ripley also learns that her daughter had no children of her own. It's a sad, dark, and desperate moment for Ripley, a perfect crisis to set up her relationship with Newt. If you never caught the DVD version of Aliens, you likely missed out on a fascinating look at life in the Weyland-Yutani terraforming colony, Hadley's Hope. In what is objectively one of the coolest deleted scenes in the Alien franchise, we see the inhabitants going about their daily routines. The inside of the complex resembles a 20th century workplace. Hard hat-wearing workers go about their duties while their coffee-swigging bosses walk and talk. The camera follows Administrator Al Simpson and his assistant, Brad Lydecker, as they move through the busy corridors dropping a heap of exposition, until they're interrupted by a gaggle of kids playing where they're not supposed to be. The conversation revolves around Lydecker's query about a survey team he sent to a grid point that Weyland-Yutani wanted checked out, and it seems like they've found something. Unfortunately for the doomed colony, that something turns out to be the Derelict. Directly after the Hadley's Hope scene is a look at exactly what that mom-and-pop survey team was headed over to check out. Inside a bumpy rover bearing across the landscape, we see a family of 4 including a familiar face, Newt Jordan. The rover arrives at the Derelict, but before calling it in, Newt's parents tell the kids to wait in the car while they climb into a crack to get a peek at their big score. Hours later, Timmy is reassuring Newt everything is okay since their dad knows what he's doing. And then Newt's mom comes back. Ultimately, the entire extended sequence was removed for time after James Cameron was told he had to cut about 20 minutes from the film. On the DVD audio commentary for the special edition, Newt actor Carrie Henn notes the scene's importance in helping establish the depth of her hatred for the xenomorphs. Few moments in the Alien saga would have been as satisfying as the alternate fate of Carter Burke. Sadly, this didn't quite make the final cut. The theatrical version of Aliens doesn't reveal much about Burke's death. He gets ambushed by a xenomorph, sure, but we don't get to see if he's killed or taken away to be cocooned. But we were originally supposed to see his demise in all its horrible glory. Speaking on the special edition DVD commentary, Carrie Henn explained, it originally started that Sigourney was supposed to have run into Paul Reiser, and he did a cocoon scene as well, and she gave him a grenade. This deleted scene features exactly that. Near the end of the movie, Ripley discovers a cocooned Burke hanging from a wall.
It's inside. Ow!
Given their history, she's not exactly moved by his pleas. Ripley hands him a grenade, and as she emerges from the passage, we hear it go off. David Fincher's Alien 3 placed Ripley in an all-male penal colony full of antisocial criminals. According to those who worked on the sequel, the original film would have upped the body horror to a much higher degree. Take, for example, the so-called dog burster scene, which is exactly what it sounds like. Centering around prison mutt Spike, this moment sees a chest burster erupt from the dog, resulting in a more canine-like variant of xenomorph. Still, as gruesome as this sequence might be, Fincher's film originally had a scene that was even worse. In the theatrical cut of Alien 3, Ripley demands an autopsy be performed on Newt's corpse, as she wants to make sure that the child isn't carrying an alien embryo. It's a hard scene to watch, but not nearly as hard as the one that was filmed, which showed a lot more detail. The original version of the scene was so disturbing, in fact, that some viewers abandoned test screenings in protest. Speaking in a behind-the-scenes documentary, makeup artist Greg Canham said that even he, who likes gory movies, felt sick watching the scene.
I was just thinking, this will never be in the film. They can't show this stuff. It was just too much, I thought.
Jean-Pierre Jeunet's Alien Resurrection takes place 200 years after Alien 3 and features a cloned version of Ripley. The script was written by Joss Whedon, who came up with several alternate endings. Whedon was determined to bring Ripley back to Earth at the film's climax, something that had never been done in an Alien movie. His first ending took place in a forest, with Ripley the so-called newborn, Annalee Call, and 2 other survivors crash landing there. The newborn is eventually taken out with what is essentially a futuristic combine harvester. As it's torn to shreds, the creature's acid blood starts a fire around them. When that ending was rejected, Whedon came up with a few more. He told In Focus, "The second one was in a futuristic junkyard. The third one was in a maternity ward. And the fourth one was in the desert." Now, at this point, this had become about money, and I said, the desert looks like Mars. That's not Earth. That's not going to give people that juice. But I still wrote them the best ending I could that took place in the desert. Ultimately, the powers that be decided that they didn't need to touch down on Earth after all, but they definitely considered it. In a version of the ending that was later used in the film's special edition release, Ripley and Call land in a post-apocalyptic Paris, complete with a half-collapsed Eiffel Tower. Just when fans finally felt like they had xenomorph mythology figured out, the Alien franchise threw a whole new wrench into the works. In Prometheus, we learned that humanity was created by the ancient, godlike alien race known as the Engineers. Later, for reasons we cannot possibly understand, these same aliens attempted to wipe us out. The Engineers are also behind the archaeological finds that lead Elizabeth Shaw and Charlie Holloway to join an expedition to LV-223. It's kind of a drag, then, that one key conversation with the last engineer wound up being cut from the film's theatrical release. In the original version, the engineer is discovered in stasis by the Prometheus crew. After a short conversation, he loses his cool in a fairly spectacular way. In an expanded deleted scene, however, that conversation is much longer. Under the direction of Peter Wayland, David tells the engineer that his boss wants to live forever.
"You and I, we are superior. We are creators. We are gods."
This extended scene helps explain what ticked off the engineer in the first place, giving us a lot more clarity as to why the film's third act actually happens.